Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the towering crystalline structure that served as the Galactic Council's assembly hall. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the datapad containing humanity's desperate plea. Around her, representatives from dozens of species filled the vast chamber, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. Some floated in gravity pods, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained within special suits. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into comprehensible speech. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes could determine the fate of her entire species. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice amplified across the chamber. "I come before you today, representing the planet Earth and its 8 billion human inhabitants. We face an extinction-level threat that we cannot handle alone." A ripple of what sounded like laughter echoed from various sections of the assembly. Sarah pressed on, determined to deliver her message despite the obvious skepticism. 3 months ago, our scientists detected massive energy readings from the edge of our solar system. What we discovered has shaken us to our core. An ancient automated weapons system, dormant for millions of years, has awakened. Our analysis suggests it was left behind by a long-dead civilization as a final act of spite against any life that might arise in this sector. The Zephyrian delegate, a tall being with 6 arms and translucent skin, raised one of its limbs. "Ambassador Chen, while we sympathize with your species' predicament, the Galactic Council has strict policies regarding intervention in the affairs of developing civilizations. Your people have barely achieved faster than light travel." Sarah nodded, expecting this response. "Honored delegate, we understand our technological limitations. That's precisely why we're here. This weapon system is beyond our current capabilities to destroy or disable. It's already begun charging what our scientists believe to be a planet-killing energy beam. We estimate we have perhaps 6 months before it fires." Another delegate, this one resembling a massive insect with chitinous armor, clicked its mandibles in what the translation system rendered as dismissive laughter. "6 months? Young species, you overestimate your importance. The galaxy has seen countless civilizations rise and fall. If your kind cannot protect itself, perhaps it is simply your time to join the cosmic dust." The chamber erupted in various sounds of agreement. Sarah felt her heart sink but maintained her composure. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't expected such casual dismissal of human life. "With respect, honored delegates, this weapon doesn't just threaten Earth. Our analysis indicates it's designed to target any technological civilization within a 50 light-year radius. That includes several of your colonies and trade routes." This caused some stirring among the delegates. The Centaurian representative, a being of pure thought inhabiting a mechanical body, projected its words directly into the translation network. "If what you say is true, why has our own monitoring not detected this threat?" Sarah activated her datapad, projecting a holographic display of the weapon system. The image showed a massive structure, easily the size of a small moon, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "The weapon is cloaked using technology we don't understand. We only detected it because one of our deep space mining operations happened to be in the exact right position when it briefly powered up for a diagnostic cycle. Our best xenoarchaeologists believe it was created by the HFY, the same civilization that left the dead worlds in the Arcturus sector." A hush fell over the chamber at the mention of the HFY. Even the youngest species in the galaxy had heard whispers of that ancient race, known for their spite and the scorched worlds they left behind before vanishing into extinction. The ethereal collective's representative, a shimmering cloud of sentient gas, spoke in harmonic tones. "The HFY have been extinct for over 3 million years. Their weapons, if any remain, would have degraded long ago." "That's what we hoped too," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the weight of desperation. "But this one didn't degrade, it waited. Our analysis suggests it's been in hibernation mode, designed to activate only when it detected sufficient technological development in the target area. Earth's recent expansion into space and our establishment of orbital facilities appears to have triggered its wake-up sequence." The Cormanic delegate, a reptilian being with scales that shifted color with emotion, hissed softly. Even if we believed your claims, what exactly do you expect us to do? The Council doesn't intervene in the natural order of galactic evolution. Sarah had prepared for this moment, knowing it was her species' only chance. We're not asking for intervention. We're asking for trade. We have something to offer in exchange for the technology or assistance needed to deal with this threat. This sparked genuine interest among some delegates. The concept of trade was universally understood and accepted. Even when dealing with primitive species, what could your young species possibly offer that would interest the galactic community? Asked the Zephyrian delegate, its tone condescending but curious. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing she was about to reveal humanity's most closely guarded secret. Music. The silence that followed was different from the dismissive quiet before. It was confused, uncertain. Music? Repeated the ethereal collective's representative. You offer auditory patterns? Not just auditory patterns, Sarah explained, activating another display. Humans have developed a form of artistic expression that appears to be unique in the galaxy. Our music doesn't just convey information or coordinate activities like the harmonic communications used by other species. It evokes emotional responses across species barriers. She played a brief sample of classical human music. The effect was immediate and visible across the chamber. Delegates who had been shifting restlessly became still. Those who communicated through color displays began showing patterns they'd never exhibited before. The pure energy beings flickered in rhythm with the melody. This is unusual, admitted the Centaurian representative. Our analysis indicates that these sound patterns are triggering neural responses in ways our science cannot fully explain. The Cormanic delegate's scales had shifted to a golden hue that, according to the translation system, indicated wonder. How is this possible? Music exists throughout the galaxy, but this is different. Sarah nodded. Our scientists believe it has to do with humanity's unique evolutionary path. We developed on a world with complex acoustic environments and a wide variety of other species that also used sound for communication. This forced our brains to evolve in ways that apparently don't occur elsewhere. She played another sample, this time a piece of jazz that seemed to make several delegates sway despite themselves. We've tested this effect on the few alien species we've encountered during our recent space expansion. The response is consistent across all of them. Human music appears to trigger something universal, something that transcends species boundaries. The chamber buzzed with excited conversations as delegates conferred among themselves. Sarah waited, hoping she had finally captured their attention in a meaningful way. The lead delegate, an ancient being whose species was so old that no one remembered their original name, spoke for the first time during the session. Its voice carried the weight of eons. This is indeed intriguing, young human. But artistic curiosities, however unique, hardly constitute payment for the kind of assistance you require. Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment she'd been preparing for. Honored Ancient One, we believe the applications of human music extend far beyond mere entertainment. Initial tests suggest it could be used for therapy across species, enhancing productivity, even facilitating better communication between different galactic civilizations. She activated a final display showing data from their limited experiments. We've documented cases where exposure to human music has accelerated healing in injured aliens, improved problem-solving abilities, and even helped resolve conflicts between different species groups. The ancient delegate considered this for a long moment. Interesting. But still, hardly enough to justify the massive resources required to deal with a Vex-high weapon system. Sarah felt desperation creeping in. What if we offered exclusive access? Earth could become a cultural center for the galaxy, a place where diplomatic missions could experience this unique art form. We could train other species in musical appreciation and even composition. Ridiculous, scoffed the insect-like delegate. A backwater world becoming a cultural center? Your species hasn't even achieved basic matter manipulation. The laughter that followed was harsh and dismissive. Sarah could feel her last hope slipping away. Furthermore, continued the Zephyrian delegate, even if your music has the effects you claim, the cost of mounting an expedition to deal with an ancient weapon would be astronomical. The Council has never committed such resources for a single primitive world. Then you're sentencing 8 billion people to death, Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly despite her efforts to remain professional. Death is natural, replied the ethereal collective's representative coldly. Civilizations that cannot protect themselves serve no purpose in the galactic community. The ancient delegate raised what might have been a hand, calling for silence. The Council will deliberate on your request, Ambassador Chen. You may wait in the preparation chambers for our decision. Sarah knew from their tone what that decision would be. As she was escorted from the chamber, she could already hear delegates discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes. Her species' fate apparently forgotten already. In the small waiting room, Sarah sat alone, staring at her reflection in the polished metal walls. 18 months of preparation, humanity's greatest diplomatic effort. And it had been dismissed as easily as a child's request for candy. She activated her communication device, establishing a connection with Earth despite the enormous cost and delay. Director Martinez appeared on the screen. His face grim. "How did it go?" he asked, though her expression had already given him the answer. "They're not interested," Sarah reported, her voice hollow. "They think we're too primitive to be worth saving. Even the music didn't sway them enough." Martinez nodded slowly. "I see. And the Council's official response?" "They're still deliberating, but I can read the room. The answer will be no." There was a long pause as Martinez absorbed this news. Finally, he spoke again. "Then, we move to Phase 2. Sarah frowned. "Phase 2? Director, there is no Phase 2. This was our only plan." Martinez smiled grimly. "No, Sarah. This was our first plan. Phase 2 has been in development since we first detected that weapon." The Council's response was, "Anticipated. I don't understand." "You will soon. Your job isn't over, Ambassador. We need you to stay on the Council station and observe their reactions over the next few weeks. Document everything." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, the transmission cut out. She stared at the blank screen, confused and suddenly anxious. What hadn't they told her? What was Phase 2? 3 hours later, the Council reconvened. Sarah was called back to hear their formal response, though she already knew what it would be. The ancient delegate spoke without preamble. "After careful deliberation, the Galactic Council has determined that intervention in your species' predicament would set a dangerous precedent. While we acknowledge the uniqueness of human music, it does not constitute sufficient cause for the massive expenditure of resources required." Sarah nodded, having expected this. "I understand, honored delegates. Humanity thanks you for your consideration. However," the delegate continued, "the Council recognizes the potential value of your musical art form. We would be willing to offer transportation for a limited number of your people to serve as cultural ambassadors throughout the galaxy. Perhaps 10,000 individuals could be saved to preserve this unique artistic tradition." The offer was meant to be generous, Sarah realized. In their minds, they were being magnanimous by offering to save even that many humans. The fact that it would mean abandoning nearly 8 billion others to die apparently didn't factor into their calculation. "I'll relay your offer to Earth," Sarah said diplomatically. "Though I suspect our government will choose to remain with our people regardless of the outcome." "Sentiment over logic," observed the Cormanic delegate, its scales showing mild disapproval. Another primitive trait. As Sarah left the chamber for what she assumed would be the final time, she couldn't shake Director Martinez's words. Phase 2. What could humanity possibly have planned that they hadn't tried diplomatically first? Over the following days, Sarah remained on the Council station as instructed, observing and documenting everything she could. The delegates went about their business as if Earth's impending destruction was already forgotten. Trade agreements were negotiated, territorial disputes mediated, and cultural exchanges planned between established civilizations. It was on the 5th day that the first reports began filtering in. Sarah was in the station's observation deck, watching the beautiful chaos of one of the galaxy's busiest space lanes, when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Emergency broadcasts activated, and the melodious voice of the station's artificial intelligence filled the corridors. "Attention all residents. We are receiving multiple reports of unknown vessels appearing throughout galactic space. These craft do not match any known design and are not responding to standard communication protocols. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Unknown vessels? She rushed to the nearest information terminal. Her diplomatic credentials still granting her access to General Council communications. The reports were coming in from everywhere. Dozens, then hundreds of unidentified ships were materializing near major galactic trade routes, military installations, and population centers. They weren't attacking, just appearing. Each ship was roughly the same size, about 1 kilometer in length, with a sleek design that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. They maintained position near key galactic infrastructure but made no hostile moves. Sarah's communication device chimed with an incoming message from Earth. This time, it was President Williams herself who appeared on the screen. Ambassador Chen, I trust you've heard about our fleet's deployment. Our fleet? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Phase 2, Ambassador. We've been preparing for the Council's rejection since we first discovered the Vex-High weapon. If the galactic community won't help us, we'll handle this ourselves, and we'll make sure they understand exactly who they chose to dismiss. Sarah stared at the screen in shock. Madam President, where did those ships come from? How did we build a space fleet of that size without anyone knowing? Williams smiled, but there was something cold in her expression. That, Ambassador, is what the galaxy is about to find out. Humanity isn't quite as primitive as we've allowed everyone to believe. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within 6 hours of the first ship sightings. Ambassador Sarah Chen found herself once again standing before the assembly. But this time the atmosphere was entirely different. Where before there had been dismissive arrogance, now there was confusion and barely contained alarm. The ancient delegate's voice carried an edge of tension that hadn't been present during their previous encounter. Ambassador Chen, the Council requires an immediate explanation for the presence of these vessels throughout galactic space. They appeared without warning and ignore all communication attempts. Sarah looked around the chamber, noting how the various delegates now avoided direct eye contact with her. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically in just a few hours. Honored delegates, those are human vessels. They represent our response to your decision regarding the Vex-High weapon. The Zephyrian delegate's skin flushed with agitated patterns. Impossible. Your species barely possesses interstellar flight capability. These ships demonstrate technology we ourselves do not fully understand. That, Sarah replied calmly, was intentional. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations as delegates tried to process this statement. Sarah waited for them to settle before continuing. For the past 2 centuries, humanity has been aware that we were not alone in the universe. We detected your communication networks, observed your trade routes, and studied your technologies from a distance. We made a conscious decision to appear less advanced than we actually were. The Cormanic delegate's scales shifted through several color patterns indicating disbelief and alarm. You're claiming your species deliberately presented false technological capabilities to the galactic community? Yes. We learned early on that advanced civilizations rarely view emerging species as equals. They see them as either potential subjects to be managed or competitors to be eliminated. We chose to appear harmless while we developed in secret. Sarah activated her datapad, displaying holographic images that none of the delegates had seen before. These showed human settlements and facilities that clearly didn't match their supposed technological level. What you've observed of human civilization represents perhaps 10% of our actual development. The rest has been carefully hidden. The images showed massive orbital installations around Jupiter and Saturn that had somehow avoided detection, underground cities on Mars that were far more advanced than the basic mining outposts the galaxy knew about, and manufacturing facilities in asteroid belts that were producing technology comparable to anything in galactic space. This is preposterous, declared the insect-like delegate. Our monitoring systems would have detected such installations. Your monitoring systems detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Sarah explained. One of humanity's greatest advantages is our aptitude for deception and misdirection. We've been feeding your sensors carefully crafted false information for decades. She brought up another display showing the true scope of human space presence. Instead of the handful of primitive outposts the galaxy believed existed, humanity had established a vast network of hidden bases throughout their solar system and beyond. The ships currently positioned throughout galactic space represent approximately 30% of our actual fleet. The rest remain hidden, waiting. The ethereal collective's representative shimmered with what the translation system indicated was profound confusion. Waiting for what? Waiting for what? For the galaxy's response to our revelation, Sarah answered. You see, the Vex High weapon isn't actually a threat to Earth. We've known about it for over 50 years and have been monitoring it continuously. It was never a danger to us. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazes as the implications of her words sank in. Then why? Began the ancient delegate. Why did we lie about it being a threat? Sarah finished. Because we needed to test something. We needed to understand how the galactic community would respond to a crisis affecting a species they considered primitive. Your answer told us everything we needed to know. The Centaurian representative's mechanical form whirred as its processing units worked overtime. This entire scenario was a deception, not the weapon itself. That's real. And it is dangerous. But not to us. We've developed defensive measures and containment protocols specifically designed for Vex High technology. We could have dealt with it ourselves at any time. Sarah paused, letting the full scope of the deception settle over the assembly. What we couldn't deal with was our isolation. Humanity has reached a level of development where we need to interact with the broader galactic community. But we needed to know what kind of community it actually was. Would you help a species facing extinction? Would you put aside your prejudices to save billions of lives? Would you recognize the value of something truly unique? The answers to these questions hung heavy in the air. The Council's response had been clear. They would not. So this was all an elaborate test? The Cormanic delegate's scales now showed a pattern that the translation system struggled to interpret, but seemed to suggest a combination of anger and grudging respect. A test and a demonstration, Sarah confirmed. The ships currently positioned throughout galactic space aren't just showing our military capabilities. They're showing our technological sophistication, our strategic thinking, and our ability to operate undetected in your territory for extended periods. The ancient delegate leaned forward in what might have been a threatening gesture, if not for the obvious concern in its voice. Are you threatening the galactic community, Ambassador? Not threatening. Offering a different kind of partnership than what you're accustomed to. Sarah activated her final presentation, one she had kept hidden even from her own government until now. The display showed detailed analyses of every major galactic civilization, their strengths, weaknesses, technological capabilities, and strategic vulnerabilities. For 2 centuries, we've been watching, learning, and planning. We know more about each of your civilizations than you know about each other. We understand your trade dependencies, your resource limitations, your territorial disputes, and your military capabilities. The data was staggering in its completeness: trade route schedules, military deployment patterns, resource extraction data, technological development timelines, and diplomatic relationship analyses for dozens of species filled the display. How did you acquire this information? Demanded the Zephyrian delegate. The same way we hid our true development level. Humanity excels at intelligence gathering and strategic analysis. We've had operatives and monitoring systems throughout galactic space for decades. Your security measures are designed to detect threats from known species using familiar technologies. They're not designed to detect threats from a species that officially doesn't possess the capability to create such threats. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates began to realize the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't a primitive species begging for help. This was an advanced civilization that had been studying them like laboratory specimens. What do you want from us? Asked the ethereal collective's representative, its harmonic tones now carrying undertones of wariness. We want to join the galactic community as equals, not as a protected species or a managed territory. We want full membership in the Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The insect-like delegate clicked its mandibles aggressively. And if we refuse? Will you use those ships to force compliance? Sarah smiled for the first time since revealing the truth. Force has never been our preferred method. We prefer negotiation from a position of mutual respect. However, we thought you should understand what you're negotiating with. She gestured to the data still displayed around the chamber. Every major galactic civilization depends on resources, trade routes, or technologies that could be disrupted if we chose to do so. We could collapse the Centaurian crystal markets by flooding them with synthetics. We could redirect the Zephyrian food supply routes away from their colonies. We could interfere with the Cormanic mating season migrations. The implications were clear without being explicitly threatening. Humanity had the knowledge and capability to cause massive disruption throughout galactic space. But we don't want to do any of that, Sarah continued. We want to contribute positively to galactic civilization. We want to share our unique perspectives and abilities. We want to help solve problems and create new opportunities for everyone. She brought up a new display showing potential human contributions to galactic society. Advanced medical treatments, innovative technologies, artistic expressions, and problem-solving methodologies that could benefit everyone. The music you dismissed as merely interesting? It's just one example of human creativity. We approach problems differently than other species. We see patterns and solutions that others miss. We have technologies and techniques that could revolutionize how the galaxy operates. The ancient delegate had remained silent throughout most of this revelation, but now it spoke thoughtfully. You present a compelling argument, Ambassador, but trust is not easily rebuilt once it has been shattered. How can we be certain that your species won't use this deception as a template for future actions? Because deception is a tool with limited utility, Sarah replied. It worked once because you didn't know to look for it. More importantly, we've revealed the truth voluntarily. We could have continued the masquerade indefinitely, but we chose transparency because that's the foundation of the relationship we want to build. She gestured to the ships, still visible through the chamber's transparent walls. Those vessels aren't there to threaten you. They're there to demonstrate that we have the capability to defend ourselves and our interests. We don't need your protection, but we would value your partnership. The Cormanic delegate's scales were now showing what appeared to be thoughtful consideration. And the Vex High weapon? If it poses no threat to you, why reveal its existence at all? Quote, because it does pose a threat to others, Sarah answered. Our analysis indicates that several of your colony worlds are within its potential target range. We thought you should know about it so you could make informed decisions about your people's safety. This revelation sparked a new round of urgent discussions among the delegates. If humanity was correct about the weapon's range, it could threaten millions of galactic citizens. Why not simply deal with the weapon yourselves? Asked the Centaurian representative. Because destroying it requires entering the territory of 3 different galactic civilizations. We prefer not to violate sovereign space without permission, hence our original diplomatic approach. The ancient delegate processed this for a long moment. You're saying you could have solved this problem unilaterally, but chose to respect galactic law and territorial boundaries? Correct. We want to be part of the galactic community, not a rogue element operating outside it. The chamber fell quiet as delegates absorbed the full complexity of the situation. Humanity had revealed themselves to be far more advanced than anyone suspected, capable of massive deception and potential disruption, but also apparently committed to working within established diplomatic frameworks. We will need time to process this information and consult with our respective governments, the ancient delegate finally announced. The Council will reconvene in 72 hours to provide a formal response. As the delegates began to file out of the chamber, Sarah noticed something she hadn't expected. Instead of the fear and hostility she had anticipated, many of the representatives looked intrigued. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had shocked them, certainly, but it had also excited their curiosity. The ethereal collective's representative lingered after the others had left. Ambassador Chen, may I ask a personal question? Of course. When your species first detected our communication networks 2 centuries ago, what was your first reaction? Sarah thought carefully before answering. Wonder. And a desire to understand. We knew we would eventually make contact, but we wanted to be sure we could do so as equals rather than subjects. And now, having achieved that equality through deception, now we want to move beyond deception to genuine partnership. The masquerade served its purpose, but it's no longer necessary or desirable. The being shimmered thoughtfully. Your species is unlike anything we've encountered before. I find myself curious to see what kind of partners you will prove to be. After the representative left, Sarah stood alone in the vast chamber, looking out at the human ships that continued to maintain their positions throughout galactic space. In 72 hours, the galaxy would give its response to humanity's revelation and request for equal membership. But regardless of that response, one thing was already certain. The galaxy would never again see humanity as a primitive, helpless species in need of guidance or protection. The question now was whether they would see them as potential partners or potential threats. Sarah activated her communication device to report back to Earth. Director Martinez appeared on the screen. His expression, expectant. How did they take the revelation? He asked. About as well as we expected. Shock, confusion, some anger, but also curiosity. They're reconvening in 72 hours to give their formal response. And your assessment of their likely decision? Sarah considered the question carefully. They're scared, but they're also intrigued. I think we have a real chance of gaining the partnership we want. The demonstration was effective. Dr. Martinez nodded. Good. Phase 3 is ready if needed, but I hope it won't be necessary. Sarah felt a chill at the mention of another phase. Director, how many phases are there? Hopefully, only the 3. Phase 1 was diplomacy through apparent weakness. Phase 2 was revelation of strength. Phase 3. He paused. Phase 3 would be demonstration of what happens when humanity stops trying to be diplomatic. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with the weight of that implied threat. She looked out at the human fleet, wondering just how much her species was still hiding, and hoping that the galaxy would choose partnership over conflict. Because if the last few days had taught her anything, it was that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had suspected, and she was beginning to suspect that even she didn't know the full extent of what her own species was capable of. The Galactic Council reconvened exactly 72 hours later, but the chamber looked vastly different from their previous meetings. Where before there had been casual confidence and dismissive superiority, now there was careful tension and guarded respect. Ambassador Sarah Chen noticed that several delegates had brought additional security personnel, and the chamber's defensive systems were clearly active. The ancient delegate called the session to order with unusual formality. Ambassador Chen, the Council has completed its deliberations regarding humanity's request for full membership and your revelations about your species' true capabilities. Sarah stood calmly, though she could feel her heart racing. Everything hinged on the next few minutes. After extensive consultation with our respective governments and careful analysis of the information you've provided, the Council has reached a unanimous decision. The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever. Your request for full membership is denied. Sarah felt the words hit her like a physical blow, though she managed to keep her expression neutral. She had hoped, despite everything, that the demonstration of human capabilities would have been enough. However, the ancient delegate continued, we offer a compromise position. Humanity will be granted associate membership status with limited voting rights and gradual integration into galactic affairs over a probationary period of 50 years. The Zephyrian delegate added, this will allow the galaxy time to adapt to your presence while ensuring that your unique methods of operation can be properly monitored and regulated. Sarah understood immediately. They were offering to treat humanity as a potentially dangerous junior partner rather than an equal. It was better than outright rejection, but it wasn't the partnership humanity had sought. I appreciate the Council's consideration, Sarah replied diplomatically. However, I'll need to consult with my government before providing a response. May I request a brief recess? Of course. We understand this is a significant decision. Sarah activated her communication device. But instead of calling Earth directly, she sent a coded message that simply read, Stage 3 authorized. Within minutes, her device chimed with an incoming transmission from President Williams. Ambassador, I trust the Council's response was as we anticipated? Yes, Madam President. They're offering associate membership with a 50-year probationary period, essentially treating us as potentially dangerous children. Williams nodded grimly. Then they still don't understand who they're dealing with. Initiate Phase 3. What exactly is Phase 3? Sarah asked, her concern evident. The demonstration they need to see before they can truly understand our position. Stand by. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah both anxious and curious. She returned to the council chamber, where the delegates were waiting somewhat impatiently. Honored delegates, I've consulted with my government regarding your generous offer. However, before we provide our formal response, my leadership has requested that I share one final piece of information with the council. The ancient delegate's tone carried a note of wariness. What information would that be, Ambassador? The location and true nature of the Vex-High weapon that originally brought me before this body. Sarah activated her datapad, but instead of displaying information on the screen, she transmitted coordinates directly to the chamber's main display system. As I mentioned during our previous discussion, this weapon has been known to humanity for over 50 years. What I didn't mention is that we've been studying it extensively during that time. The coordinates appeared on the chamber's central display, showing a location at the edge of human space. But as the image resolved, it became clear that this wasn't just a location marker. This is a live feed from the weapon's position, Sarah explained. As you can see, the ancient Vex-High construct is no longer dormant. The display showed the massive weapon system that Sarah had described weeks earlier, but now it was clearly active. Energy patterns danced across its surface, and the geometric patterns that hurt to look at were glowing with increasing intensity. According to our calculations, it will reach full charge and fire within the next 36 hours. Sarah continued. The target, as we predicted, includes several galactic colonies and trade routes within 50 light-years. The chamber erupted in alarmed discussions as delegates realized the implications. This wasn't a theoretical threat anymore. It was an immediate crisis. Why didn't you warn us sooner? Demanded the Cormanic delegate, its scales flashing patterns of anger and fear. We did warn you, Sarah replied calmly. Weeks ago, you dismissed our concerns as the desperate pleas of a primitive species. The ethereal collective's representative shimmered urgently. Can it be stopped? Do you have the capability to destroy it? We do. In fact, our forces are already in position to neutralize the threat. But there's something you need to understand first. Sarah transmitted new data to the display, showing detailed scans of the weapon system. The information was far more comprehensive than anything the galaxy possessed about Vex's high technology. This isn't just a weapon, it's a test. The Vex-High didn't leave this behind out of spite. They left it as a trial for whatever civilization might eventually arise in this sector, a test of technological capability, strategic thinking, and moral character. The ancient delegate leaned forward intently. What kind of test? The weapon is designed to activate when it detects a certain level of technological development in the target area. But it doesn't actually intend to destroy that civilization. It's designed to see how they'll respond to the threat of extinction. Sarah brought up new displays, showing the weapon's true internal structure. If a civilization responds with immediate violence, attempting to destroy the weapon through brute force, it will indeed fire and eliminate them. If they respond by abandoning their homeworld and fleeing, it will hunt them down across the galaxy. Then how is it meant to be stopped? Asked the Centaurian representative. Through cooperation, sacrifice, and wisdom. The weapon can only be permanently deactivated by a coordinated effort involving multiple civilizations working together, with at least one civilization willing to risk everything to protect others. The implications began to dawn on the assembled delegates. Sarah continued her explanation. Humanity triggered the weapon's activation not through our own development, but by convincing it that the galactic community had reached the necessary level of advancement. We've been feeding it carefully crafted data about galactic civilization for the past 50 years. You deliberately activated this weapon? The Zephyrian delegate's skin patterns showed pure horror. We activated the test, and now we're all facing the results. Sarah activated the chamber's communication systems, opening a channel to human forces throughout galactic space. Admiral Chen. This is Ambassador Chen. Please proceed with the demonstration. Acknowledged, Ambassador. Beginning Phase 3 demonstration now. The display split to show multiple viewpoints throughout galactic space. The human ships that had been maintaining peaceful positions near major installations were suddenly moving with purpose and coordination that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about space combat. What you're seeing, Sarah explained, is the true scope of human military capability. Every major strategic position in galactic space is currently under our direct control. The scenes were staggering. Human forces were simultaneously securing jump points, trade routes, communication networks, and resource extraction facilities across dozens of star systems. The coordination was perfect, the execution flawless, and the scale incomprehensible. "This is impossible," whispered the insect-like delegate. "No single species has the resources for an operation of this magnitude." "No single species that you know about," Sarah corrected. "But then, you never really knew anything about us, did you?" More displays activated, showing human installations that had remained hidden until now. Massive shipyards in deep space, resource extraction operations in uncharted systems, and manufacturing facilities that dwarfed anything in known galactic space. For 2 centuries, we've been building not just a civilization, but an empire. We've claimed and developed hundreds of star systems that aren't on any galactic chart. We've established resource networks that could supply the entire galaxy. We've built a military force that could conquer every civilization in this chamber. The scale was breathtaking. Humanity hadn't just been hiding their development, they'd been building an entirely parallel civilization that was larger and more advanced than the known galactic community. But we didn't build this empire for conquest, Sarah continued. We built it for protection and for partnership. The question is, what kind of partnership will the galaxy choose? She gestured to the display showing the Vex's high weapon, which was still charging toward activation. The weapon will fire in 34 hours. When it does, it will test everything we've claimed about wanting true partnership rather than domination. "What do you mean?" asked the ancient delegate. "Admiral Chen, please show them the targeting solution." The display shifted to show the weapon's intended target area. The ancient construct was indeed aimed at galactic colonies and infrastructure. But the analysis showed something unexpected. The weapon was calibrated to avoid causing maximum casualties. Instead, it was designed to cripple galactic civilization's ability to maintain its current level of technology and interstellar cooperation. The Vex High weapon isn't designed to commit genocide, Sarah explained. It's designed to force civilizations back to a more primitive state, to make them start over with hard-earned wisdom about cooperation and sacrifice. "And you can stop this?" The ethereal collective's representative was shimmering with what appeared to be desperate hope. "We can, but not alone. The weapon requires a specific type of deactivation sequence that can only be initiated by multiple species working in perfect coordination. It's designed to be impossible for any single civilization to accomplish." Sarah brought up the deactivation procedure, which was incredibly complex and required simultaneous actions from multiple points around the galaxy. Each major galactic civilization needs to contribute specific technologies, resources, and personnel to make this work, and one species needs to take the greatest risk by sending their people directly to the weapon to initiate the final shutdown sequence. "And I suppose humanity volunteers for that honor?" The Cormanic delegate's scales showed patterns of skepticism. "No," Sarah replied, shocking everyone in the chamber. "We're volunteering to coordinate the effort and provide the resources. But the final shutdown needs to be performed by a representative of the galactic community, someone who understands what they're fighting to preserve." The ancient delegate considered this carefully. "You're saying that to save the galaxy, We need to trust you completely, work together with perfect coordination, and risk our own people in the final operation. Yes. And we need to do it within the next 34 hours. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the situation became clear. Humanity had revealed themselves to be vastly more powerful than anyone had imagined, but they were offering to use that power to save civilizations that had rejected them. They were asking for trust while demonstrating that they could have simply taken whatever they wanted through force. There's one more thing you should know, Sarah added quietly. This isn't the only Vex-High weapon. Our surveys have identified 17 others scattered throughout the galaxy, all dormant, all waiting for their activation triggers. 17? The horror in the Centaurian representative's voice was evident even through its mechanical translation. 17 tests. This is just the first one. If galactic civilization fails this test, the others will never activate. If we pass, they'll present increasingly complex challenges requiring ever greater levels of cooperation and wisdom. The ancient delegate spoke slowly, as if each word carried tremendous weight. You're saying that the galaxy's entire future depends on how we handle the next 34 hours? I'm saying that the galaxy's future depends on whether we can learn to work together as equals, rather than as separate competing interests. The Vex-High weren't just testing technological capability. They were testing wisdom, cooperation, and the ability to put the greater good above individual advantage. Sarah looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species, each grappling with the magnitude of what they faced. So I'll ask one final time. Will the galactic community accept humanity as an equal partner? Will you work with us to save not just the colonies threatened by this weapon, but the future of galactic civilization itself? The ancient delegate was silent for a long moment before responding. Ambassador Chen, in light of these revelations and the immediate crisis we face, the Galactic Council unanimously grants humanity full membership status with all rights and privileges thereof, effective immediately. Furthermore, added the Zephyrian delegate, we formally request humanity's assistance in coordinating the emergency response to the Vex-High weapon. Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. Request accepted. Admiral Chen, please begin Operation Unity. The display shifted to show human forces throughout the galaxy, beginning a massive coordination effort. Instead of holding their strategic positions, they were now facilitating the movement of galactic forces, sharing technology and resources, and establishing communication networks between species that had never worked together before. What we're about to attempt, Sarah announced to the chamber, has never been done before in galactic history. Every major civilization working together toward a common goal, coordinating their efforts in perfect unity. The next 33 hours passed in a blur of unprecedented activity. Species that had been trade rivals or territorial competitors found themselves working side by side, sharing their most advanced technologies and their most brilliant minds. Humanity provided the coordination infrastructure, but every civilization contributed essential elements to the solution. The ethereal collective's mastery of energy manipulation proved crucial for calibrating the shutdown sequence. The Centaurian computational abilities were essential for the massive calculations required. The Zephyrian biological expertise was needed to interface with the weapon's organic components. The Cormanic engineering skills were vital for the physical modifications needed. And at the center of it all, human coordination and strategic thinking wove together the efforts of dozens of species into a single, unified response. When the final shutdown sequence began, it was a representative from the ancient delegate species who volunteered to make the dangerous journey to the weapon itself. As the oldest galactic civilization, they felt it was their responsibility to take the greatest risk. The shutdown was successful. The Vex-High weapon powered down permanently. Its test completed with a result that would have astonished its creators. Not only had the galactic civilizations worked together successfully, but they had done so while incorporating a previously unknown species that had proven itself capable of leadership, sacrifice, and wisdom. In the aftermath, as the galaxy celebrated its survival and the new era of cooperation that had been born from crisis, Ambassador Sarah Chen found herself back in the council chamber one final time. Ambassador, the ancient delegate said, or should I say, Counselor Chen, we owe your species a debt that can never be fully repaid. No debt is needed, Sarah replied. This was never about payment or advantage. It was about proving that cooperation is stronger than competition, that wisdom is more valuable than power, and that the galaxy is better when all of its civilizations work together as equals. The ethereal collective's representative shimmered with what appeared to be contentment, and the other Vex high weapons, when they activate, will face them together. Each test will require new levels of cooperation, new kinds of wisdom, and new forms of sacrifice. But I believe we've proven today that the galaxy is ready for whatever challenges await us. As Sarah prepared to leave for Earth to help establish humanity's permanent embassy and begin the process of true integration with galactic society, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The desperate plea that had been ridiculed had indeed stunned the galaxy. But not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity had revealed itself to be neither the primitive supplicants nor the conquering empire that different factions had feared. Instead, they had proven to be the partners the galaxy needed, but had never known how to ask for. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges that would require the combined wisdom and strength of dozens of civilizations working in perfect harmony. But for the first time in galactic history, that kind of cooperation seemed not just possible, but inevitable. Humanity had passed its test. Now it was time to help the galaxy pass the tests that lay ahead.